Ladies and gentlemen and ladies, cats and dogs, children of all ages, and everything in between, welcome, welcome, welcome. You know who it is. It is the kid, Unc Just, the pizza freak, resonating at that pizza frequency. I love talking about pizza. I love making pizza, but mostly, I said it before, I love sharing pizza with people that I give a ship about. Yes, breaking bread with people that I love. And I have a sneaking suspicion that you too, my friends, also resonate at said pizza frequency. Or why else would you be here? And where is here? Well, I'm glad you asked. Here we are, office hours presented by Noel Brohner and Slow Rise Pizza. You know the deal. Every other week, we're doing office hours. Hopefully, you guys have been making and baking and burning and learning, and you have burning questions about your pizza process, huh? Variables in the pizza equation. Noel is here with his big pizza brain. We're creating a parish of pies. A parish of pies. That's what we're trying to do. We're preaching the gospel. Excuse me, I got a little itch here. So we've been doing office hours. We've also been doing the science of sourdough. Last week we had science of sourdough. Truly interesting. We had Jion and Zach here with us, and from Clark Street and Giant Breads. I think that's what it's called. Giant Isaac Bread. Yeah, right over around the corner from me. Um, and we got to sequence their sourdough, which, like I said last week, was an enigma inside of a riddle, inside of those magic eye paintings that you have to go, you have to make your eyes go, and then the thing pops out because we are sequencing sourdough. And I used the joke last week, but I use it again because I thought it was really funny. Word to your mother. That's your mother. That's your starter, your mother. Sourdough. Anyway, you guys know the deal. Thanks for coming to hang out with us. Today, we're hoping that you guys have a bunch of questions. We're going to bring people on and, chit chat with Noel. Hopefully, like I said, a recipe does not a pizza make. There are variables in the pizza equation from, the flours you're using to the oven that you're using to the schedule to the room temp to the style to the thing, and pizza is so subjective. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So let us try to deconstruct and figure out what your pizza equation is. Without any further ado, I'm going to bring him on, the man, the myth, the legend. Here he comes. Ladies and gentlemen, Noel, Slow Rise Pizza Brohner. Noel, are you there? Ding-a-ling-a-ling, ding-a-ling, ding, ding, ding. How'd the blue bell? Blue bell?
I'm here. You hear? You see me?
I see you, but I'm just trying to figure out that blue bell, how aggressive my noise cancellation is inside the Zoom. How you doing? What's going on? What's the haps?
I mean,
Right?
it's crazy. It's crazy out there. It's crazy out there.
It
I don't
is.
know why it would be crazy out there and not crazy in here, right?
That's what I said. This is a parish of pizza. We're all trying to get Zen on the pies, dude. Let's let the crazies be crazy out there, and we can hopefully help some people out with their burning questions, huh?
That sounds good to me.
Um, so talk to me about what we were doing last week with the science of sourdough, please.
Well, that's pretty exciting. Let's see. I'm easily excited. You should know this about me.
Mhm. No, I've seen
Uh,
it. I've seen it. I've seen it.
so we are. I'm working with a company in San Diego called Leaven Foods, and
Hmm.
they are a teeny, tiny little startup. I could fit their whole laboratory and baking lab in my living room and kitchen. That's how
There
small
we
they are.
go. There we go.
And
Nice.
so we've been working together for a couple of months, and I'm doing some consulting for them, and they are working on a project where they are isolating different yeast and bacteria strains found in sourdough starters.
Hmm.
And so we did something really cool where we started the process of reaching out to people we know who donated their starters or
And that
samples
was
of their starter.
Giant Isaac and Clark Street Bread, Zach at Clark Street, right? Zach Hall.
Yep. So we had them both on after spending a week analyzing their starters, and what we tried to do was give them a breakdown of what we found and what we didn't, and tried to get some input from them. So I thought that was pretty magical. That said, a lot of the science may or may not go over my head and yours and everybody
Right.
else's.
Definitely. And I'm watching it again on the back end.
I
Like
know, I
I'm
know.
editing it and I'm still going, I watched this a couple of times and I don't know what's going on here.
Well,
But one thing I do know, there's a lot of insect legs in in this whole equation. But
Justin,
hey,
what are you talking about?
I think you know. I think that there's a lot
No,
of
no.
bacteria and this going back for every time we have a slideshow from Cameron and Jimmy, there's insect legs in it. Come on, you know the deal.
I do know the deal, but I just wanted to hear you explain it. That's actually why.
It seems like a lot of bacterium and all that stuff is getting scuttled
Did
around
you
with
say
Roundup.
bacterium?
Yeah, little
Is
bacteria.
that a sciencey term? Is that like
Yeah, yeah.
plural for
That is
bacteria
that's
or
definitely
singular?
above my pay grade. Well,
All
see,
right.
like I said, I live on a spectrum these days, so it's whatever floats boats, so to speak. So,
Yeah.
and so who we have? We don't next week. What are we doing next week?
Well, so next week we're going to be doing we're taking a break from sequencing, even though we are madly sequencing, and we're going to
Mhm.
be having Eric Pallant on.
Yeah.
So Eric is an author that I reached out to. I actually didn't know if he would say yes because these guys are like they have real lives as opposed to us, Justin. This guy is a college professor, a Fulbright scholar, an author, probably a million other things I don't know or understand. But he wrote this book called Sourdough Culture: A History of Bread Making from Ancient to Modern Bakers.
Can you show it to me?
Oh yeah, with a foreword by Peter Reinhardt. So honestly, I didn't even see that it said forward by Peter Reinhardt or remember. So I reached out to a bunch of people, including Peter, and Peter put me in touch with him. Thank you, Peter.
Gave you
And
the
so
intro.
yeah. So we are going. We're figuring out exactly what we're going to do.
Mhm.
Um, he has already made presentations, which you can find. Maybe you can put the link to the registration in the chat for people.
Mhm.
He's already done presentations on this book, the 6,000 years or so of history and of sourdough. So I wanted him to do something a little more modern. And so we're going to basically cover more or less the last 75 or 100 years, which there a lot has happened. A lot has happened. So I actually found this book to be really, really, really interesting. And by that I mean I listened to it first on Audible, which is how I read most of my books these days, so that
Mhm.
I can be baking or exercising or driving or doing whatever it
Just
is that I
just
do,
multitasking away, huh?
multitasking away. And then I was like, I need to buy this book. I want to read the book. I want to go back to chapter 7, which is what we're going to concentrate on, which is modern bread.
Oh, cool. Great.
So
For everybody that's here with us, I put his website, I put that book, his Amazon link, and also the link to sign up for that free class next Monday in the chat.
there you go.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, why don't we, guys, if you've never been here with us before, what we're going to do is we'd ask people to raise their hands. Noel was telling me that Tin was out there, and Tin had been watching a few of our classes and had a few questions that he had emailed Knowlton. I don't know if you've been to our office hours before, but what we like to do is we're going to promote you to panelists, and hopefully you'll turn on your microphone and turn on your video, and you and Noel can go over some of the questions that you had um, based on what you've been making and baking and what you've been watching. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you to. I'm going to promote you to panelist, and then I'm going to bounce. I'm going to bounce off. I'm going to spotlight. Yeah, here we go. I'm going to spotlight Noel, and I am going to stop my video, and then hopefully, here we go.
Hi.
Hey,
Good
here we
morning.
go. Here we go. I'm gonna ask you to start your video, and then we'll there we go. All right, here we go. And watch this. Boom. Just like that.
Ooh, ooh,
Yeah.
Hi.
nice. Hello there, sir. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Look, through the magic of Zoom, we
Wow.
were we were messaging earlier on Instagram, and you said I had some questions about the
Yeah, you're
advanced class. And I
real.
said, why don't you come on and let's do it? Because what I find is that a lot of the questions that you have, other people have as well. And so
Yes.
I'm
Okay.
absolutely positive that we're gonna kill many birds with one stick or stone, whatever the saying is. So thank you in advance for sending me some questions.
Oh, thank you for doing this.
Yeah. But what I prefer is to ask you a few questions so I have a better understanding for your level of baking experience, what you're interested in, where you are, and then if you want to hit me up with those questions, we can kind of go through them and take our time, and I can help you with anything you need help with.
Sure. Thank you.
So first off, where are you?
I live in New York,
You
in
do?
Montauk, New York. Yes.
In Montauk.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, I bake here. I work in a bakery. So I've been like, following your videos. Actually, I met you through the LA cookbook that I think you were on.
Yeah, really.
And
Did you
that's how
you bought the cookbook?
Yeah, I bought the cookbook just to for your recipe. That's it.
No way.
Yeah, I didn't care about anything else. I was like,
That's
I
pretty
want
cool.
that high hydration dough recipe. So
yeah.
And at that time I was just starting, and I got like some okay results. I had some problems with the mixers, and a lot of the things that people experience. And then I finally got your class through your website, and it was just like so nice. So I was able to to improve my baking a lot just by watching that video over and over.
Over and over. And you don't happen to have the book there? I've got it on my shelf, but I'm connected.
Yeah, I have it right here.
That would be awesome. So yeah, guys, so this is a book that I contributed a recipe to. There it is. Beautiful. And the author of that book decided to spend the better part of, must have been 2 years. There you go. Going around Los Angeles and interviewing chefs, and every chef and bartender and food or beverage person contributed one recipe, right? And it was actually pretty cool. It was a really cool snapshot. What was that, 2 years ago, would you say? Or
more? I would think even more. Yeah.
Yeah. So it feels like 5 years ago, because these things, like, they contact you and then they schedule it, and then they reschedule it, and then you make the recipe, then they want to come shoot it, and then it goes to press, and then it's everything that seems like 2 years ago is actually 5 years ago. But
no, it's a great book, but
it is a good book.
You just lay it all out there, all the recipe, step by step.
I do
it, and
I do.
Yeah, but it's so much better to have you live anyway.
Well, what's funny about that is that I didn't start doing video classes until probably about 2 years ago.
2 years ago,
and I was only working as a professional pizza consultant, and once in a while I would do in-person classes here in LA, or if I got invited to another city, I would do them in other cities. But mostly I didn't have the time or the space. And people are always saying, you should do online. I'm like, I don't know if that would work, because everybody has different mixers, different flours, different temperatures. There's so many variables,
yeah,
right?
so many variables. Yes. Yeah.
And you're a professional baker. You work in a bakery, right?
Yeah, I work in a bakery. Yeah.
So you know how hard it is just to control variables in a single bakery, let alone 20 or 30 people all in different places trying to do the same thing and not getting frustrated and having good results, right?
Yeah, and we use a big mixer too, which is completely different from the 10-speed mixer. So we have to do, low hydration and then add the water. I'll just stand there and do that. And we got some good results, but mostly it's just like a 24-hour dough.
Yeah.
And I'm just really interested on doing it your way, which like a 5-day, which we don't really have the time there or the fridge space, but it's something that I want to do at home. And, trying to figure out, what's the big difference between doing it 24 hours versus like,
absolutely
5 days, and how do you like keep it alive for the 5 days where, because I try to do it over like 4 days, and I think I was maybe using a lot of yeast.
Yeah.
So it will just die after, 48 hours.
Yeah.
So I'm like, how do I get there? But
it's great. I mean, for me, what's funny is that I started like anybody as a home baker, and I was buying books, and I was not having very good results. And for a long time, I would try to make one style, And it takes a long time in a home kitchen where you don't have the right oven, you don't have the right mixer, you don't have the right anything to get any style where you're like, this is pretty good, right?
Yeah.
And the style that we're talking about in the advanced class, Justin, maybe you can put a link to the advanced 1 class in the chat for people to know. That was just my attempt to show people the rudiments of how to hyper mix or intensively mix a high hydration dough, which I said, all right, let's use like all purpose, King Arthur flour and 85% hydration, right? It's highly arbitrary because depending on the flour you use, you can high hydration might be 70% depending on your protein.
Yeah,
right?
we use the Central Mill and like high protein flour.
There you go. So maybe high hydration for that could be 95 or 100%. Right?
Yeah, I can do 100 with that. Yeah, for sure.
There you go. There you go. But the thing for me was that when I was learning to mix in that style, I had more failures than successes for a long time. And then I got really lucky because I started pizza consulting, and I find that the best way to mix this dough is with a spiral mixer. Right? But I don't have a spiral mixer at home. And so one of the chefs I was working for had a spiral mixer, and I was like, let's make a deal. And it happened to be at the time, it was people in the food community knew who Ori Menashe was, and he was opening Bestia, and I was one of the opening people mixing all of his bread and pizza dough for the first 3 months. And I made a deal with him that I could come in on Mondays and mix on a real mixer, which was I had only been pizza consulting for not very long, probably under a year at that point. And it was incredible to me to be able to work on a 35-kilo mixer, which at the time was very big for me. Maybe 40 it was.
Those little waves, in the middle. Beautiful to watch and just do.
So I got to say, I had times where I couldn't get the dough to come together, and at a certain point, Ori started opening on Mondays, and he still let me come in. And I know this, I'm telling a long story, but I want people to understand that like this dough, the reason I call it the advanced class is that this is a really advanced dough. And Ori would come in and he'd be like, "Is it dough yet?" And I'd be like, "Nope." He's like, "How long have you been mixing?" I'm like, 45 minutes. He'd look, he's like, "All right." Come back 15 minutes later. "Is it dough yet?" No. He's like, one time I literally mixed for 2 hours.
Wow.
And it finally came together. And it was one of these things where I didn't understand why sometimes it would come together in 20 or 30 or 40 minutes, and sometimes it would take forever, and sometimes it would never come together.
Yeah.
And the answer actually was that flour has its own hydration. I never even considered the hydration of the flour, right?
Wow.
Even the same flour. Different hydration from batch to batch, right? It leaves the mill at a certain hydration, but then depending where it's stored and for how long, these things change. Also, the revolutions of the mixer and the geometry of the blade and the bowl and how all these things, like they make a huge difference.
Yeah.
So anyway, that dough was a huge learning experience for me. And when Justin and I started doing these classes, in person, we used to do 3 different doughs at the same time. The dough from the beginner class, the dough from the intermediate class, and the dough from the advanced class.
You have to get it all prepared.
And everybody, depending on what level they were on, would come in and pick what station they would mix at, and it was super awesome. And then when we started doing online classes, I said, all right, let me break these classes down into 3 different classes. And Justin and I did 6 classes a week for over a year, 2 beginner, 1 intermediate, and 1 advanced. And a lot of people took that class, that advanced class.
Yeah.
And I was happy. People always said to me, "Oh, why you're giving all this away?" I'm like, no. I'm not giving anything away.
No, you're just passing information. Everybody can do it their own way,
Yeah.
Like everyone has different environments and flowers, and it's just like you're just giving like some basic knowledge, right?
Yeah. And you know what I loved about that class? I mean, I like all of my classes. I love the beginner class differently than just like I suppose a father loves all of his children in different ways, right? But the really cool thing about the advanced class was that you would tell people what flour to use, but everybody would use a different flour, right? You would tell people to use a scale, but people sometimes, I don't know what they would use, a broken scale, or they would, I don't know, use a big Lexan container. I don't know how, but they would have the wrong amount of water in, or worst case scenario, some of those advanced class had maybe 20 or 30 people, each using a different kind of mixer. Some were professionals in pizzerias using Hobarts, right?
Robots,
Planetary
right.
mixers, spiral mixers, diving arm mixers, double diving arm mixers, home mixers.
It's all
and so,
different.
Yeah, and so some
How
people
do
would
you even
have their
explain
dough
that?
mixed in 20 minutes, and other people would be mixing for over an hour.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I
we're
saw that
going
also on that video that some people are having trouble with some different
Yeah.
mixer, right? So
yeah. So anyway, I thank you for joining us, and I know it was short notice. So why don't we spend a little time and go over your questions, and then we're going to go on to other people. And
Awesome.
do me a favor when we're done, if you wouldn't mind putting, if you guys have like an Instagram or a website that you want to put in the chat so people can check out what you do, or if you have a personal Instagram, we'd love to see what you got going on.
I will absolutely promote the chat.
Cool, man. So tell me. I mean, I have your questions here, but I prefer not to even look at them. If you want to ask me,
I kind of forgot
anything at all. No. I mean, I have them, but
okay. So I think the first question was once I finished mixing on the KitchenAid, and I do the first fold, how long? What am I looking at for the growing of that dough? Like
good. All right. So here's the thing. I specifically chose. I created a formula with a lot of yeast, the most. I think we had 0.4% IDY. That would be the equivalent of something close to 40% sourdough, which is a lot.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Also the equivalent of maybe 1% fresh yeast. And so I really like that because what it gives you the opportunity to do is, number one, learn how to control the fermentation, right? Because if you don't control the fermentation and the gluten development, you're going to get punished because there's so much yeast in that dough. So we had people that, I think the desired dough temperature for that dough, the DDT, was only 74 degrees, but we had people coming out of the mixer at 85 and 90 because they weren't using cold enough water, or maybe they did their calculation wrong. And so the idea is that if you come out at the right temperature, you do about a 1 hour bulk, you do maybe 2 stretch and folds, and then you go immediately into a bulk retard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's like, also it was very well formed. So I felt like I could probably put it in the fridge without doing any folds. And the temperature was right. It was about 76, but I could see how when you fold it, it moves the temperature around.
Absolutely. Super important.
So I did that, and then I was like, well, it wasn't really growing anywhere. Like it just kind of looked maybe a little bit bigger, but a little bubbles there.
Here's something interesting. So the style of mixing, if you look in Advanced Bread and Pastry or any of the classic bread baking books, they'll tell you that for an intensive mix, you do not need to do any stretch and folds. True. However, I use stretch and folds to control temperature. Right? And so especially if you come out too hot, then you go right into the refrigerator or the walk-in, and you do your stretch and folds in the cold to bring cold air into the dough as quickly as possible. Right? Because if you come out at, I've literally myself come out at close to 90 degrees, and some of my students have come out above 90 because either they miscalculated the friction or who knows, but they've come out real hot. If you have 0.4% IDY and you come out at 90 degrees, that dough is going to be ready in about 2 hours, not 2 days. Right? And so the dough is there. If you do it right and you bring the temperature down and you get that dough down to maybe 50 or 60 or 40 degrees within a couple of hours, it'll go long. It'll go long in the fridge. And then when you're ready to bring it out and you shape it, pre-shape it, it'll rise fast, right?
So the last rise will be towards the end. Like, is it going to grow like at all on the fridge, or it will just be like a little bit?
It's a really good question. So there's a lot of answers to that question. I'll give you 2. The first answer is no, it's not supposed to grow a lot. But really what it depends on is the thermal mass of your dough. One thing we know about dough is that fermenting dough holds heat and creates heat in the center. And so what you'll often have is a dough that actually starts out flat, right? Maybe it even goes down a little bit, but it rises in the middle because you have fermentation happening in the center of the dough. That's a good and a bad thing. Right? It shows you that it's alive, but if it rises too much, then you have warm dough on the inside and cold dough on the outside, and you have unevenly fermented dough. Big, huge problem.
Okay.
So another reason why I chose that dough as a dough to teach people about, because you have to make that dough many times in order to, quote unquote, master it. right? And everything that can go wrong with a dough should probably go wrong with that dough. And another reason that I want people to learn that, and that's why I call it advanced class, right?
Yeah, correct.
Because it's an advanced dough. It's high hydration. It's got a dangerous amount of yeast. It's super sticky. The mixing style is not for beginners, you know?
No, it takes time for sure.
It takes time.
Is there a reason why you don't use any oil on that kind of mix? Yeah.
So what I try to do when I teach is I try to pare down the doughs as much as I possibly can, right? And by pare down, I try to make them as simple as I can. So for instance, for a beginning baker, I actually will put some olive oil and some sugar in the dough so that they get a little extra browning, a little extra flavor, a little extra love. Let's put it that way, for lack of a better term. But for an advanced baker, no pre-ferments, no olive oil, no nothing, just a straight dough. And I want to see what you can get from that. Right. I could also take that same dough and substitute sourdough starter. I can take that same dough and put a bigo or a pouliche or a pat fermentation, many different things, but I don't. We talk about in that class towards the end, we talk about pre-ferments, and I bring out a lot of formulas and I go over them in Baker's Math with people. That's really important. But my idea, and it's not only mine, but the idea that I try to teach people is always start with a straight dough. And then if you want, once you master that, then it's really easy to substitute pre-ferment. But too many people that are not advanced bakers, they're beginning and intermediate bakers, they start using pre-ferments prematurely to me. And so when they're having problems with their dough, I can't isolate where the problem is coming from, because it might be a gluten development issue, it might be a fermentation issue, it might be a pre-ferment issue. It could be a million other things.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I was using pre-ferments, but because I was baking the same day, but now since I'm starting your long, fermentation, I'm not using it. So yeah, I understand that. So now after you're like, you have it for 48 hours in the fridge, then you take that out, then what will be the best way to shape that to go into a pan for a focaccia?
So here's the thing. It really depends. I would say there's no best way. I would say what way works best for you.
For me.
So I think you said in one of your emails that you do it really tight. Right?
Yeah, I just sort of bowl it, and turn it like almost like a big pizza dough. Yeah. And then I lift it like very carefully and I put it in an oil pan. Good. And then I let it proof again until it like doubles again. Yeah. And I then pull it very carefully and then I'll bake it.
Good. So that's one of my favorite ways, but I wouldn't never say it was the best. Here's what I think that's good for. When you do a high hydration dough and you ball it really tight, you're going to get really beautiful surface tension. And so when that dough springs in the oven, it's really going to spring, right?
Yeah, it gets
huge.
Yeah.
But if you don't let it relax enough, one of the things that it'll also do is it won't reach the four corners of a square rectangular pan. It'll pull away. And for a lot of people, they treasure those corners. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
If you look at a Sicilian style or a Detroit style or many pan pizza styles, Roman style, those corners are money. People want those corners.
Yeah.
Right?
All right. So it's just a matter of like the style that you want.
Yeah. So I would say if you're going to, probably you want to shape oblong if you're going to go into a rectangular pan.
Okay.
Right? Or even if you're going to go into a square pan, you might also do oblong. And you can, it doesn't make sense to me to go round for a square or rectangular pan unless you don't care about the corners, unless what you really want is those really big air pockets.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking for. Sort of more like a cakey style with like sort of like the one you have on the book there, the one photo that I really like that.
The other thing is that I feel is I often teach people to do a round pre-shape and a round shape because I feel like it's easier for beginners to master a round shape than an oblong shape. People who take a baguette, for instance, right? I spent 3 months in baking school making a baguette. I made hundreds, if not thousands, of baguettes. And honestly, I don't know if I ever made a good one. Maybe I made one or two, but definitely not a great one. Because it's so hard. There's so many steps, right? But I think if you learn to make a good round dough ball, that it's more forgiving and has better structure overall than learning to shape like something like for a baguette.
Like
right?
a
An
baguette,
oblong shape.
Yeah.
I remember just being in baking school where every day we'd make baguettes 2 or 3 times, and every day the instructors would take a knife and slash it open, and you'd see all the flaws. That's a flaw from the mixing. That's a flaw from the pre-shape. That's a flaw from the final shape. That's a scoring flaw, right? That's a steam flaw. You're like, flaw. Did we do anything right? Yeah, but like if you make 2 or 3 mistakes making a baguette, it's shit. Sorry to say it, right? Yeah. You work in a real bakery. Do you guys make baguettes?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, I don't
hard, right?
But someone else does. I do like a lot of the country loaves, and I do all the focaccia, ciabatta. But yeah, I tried the baguettes, and it's like, oh my god, maybe next year.
There you go. So here, just quick answer to that question. I think that everybody needs to try a variety of different pre-shapes and shapes and decide what's right for them.
What's right.
I do it my way. The Italians do it their way. Everybody does it their own way. And so I'm always interested in what the tradition is. And then I try to branch out and try new things and see if I can innovate. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. Sometimes there's a good reason why they do certain things, right?
Yep. Correct. So for those 3 breads that you did on that video, did you end up baking them as breads, or did you end up putting those in a pan?
So the way
I was just an example.
Yeah, no. Yeah. So here's the thing. You can make a bread or a pizza, a pan pizza, with any of those shapes. It just really depends on what your goal is, right? Do you want something that's really extensible? Do you want something that has a ridiculous crumb structure? Do you want something that's going to be ready in 2 to 3 hours to bake, or is 5 or 6 all right? Because if you do too powerful of a shaping job, too tight of a ball, that even though it's high hydration, that dough has muscle memory. Right?
Yeah, they're really hard to expand, and then by the time that you relax a lot, then it's already like on the overproof side.
Yeah. So for me, another reason that I teach that in the advanced class without any pre-shapes is that I feel like it's going to take anybody who's serious to bake, if not a couple of weeks, then a couple of months to get to a place where they're ready to start adding pre-ferments or doing anything like for real.
Yeah, it starts changing everything. Even if the pre-ferment, pre-ferment is a little bit off, or it has more water, or it has salt, like everything is going to change. So okay, cool. Well, that answered my questions.
That's great. I'm so glad that you decided to come on. Look, I'm always answering questions by email, but one of the reasons that we do this class is that I hope that people can learn from your questions, and I hope that no, for real. And these questions that you asked are awesome, and that's why I invited you on and took more time with you than I often do with some people, because this is why I love teaching. And
I really
people like you from all over the world come, and like it's amazing to me.
Thank you. So next time I'll bring the focaccia and I'll show you guys.
Yeah, that's what we want, Tim. That's what we want, Tim.
Awesome. Well,
I tell you. Yeah, we love that. I always call it the hyper mix, the spaz mix. We always love that mix.
Justin, don't say spaz.
When we were in class, people wouldn't believe. They wouldn't believe it was going to come together, and we just say, trust us. Trust the process. Trust the process. It'll come. Great to meet you, Tim. Come back and see us.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for your help.
Thanks so much, bud.
Bye-bye.
All right, we've got your friend and mine, Ezra, coming in. Ez, are you there? Are you there? All right. Where is our old friend?
See what happens? See what happens, Justin?
Why can't I? There it is. There it is. Hold on. Ask to start video. Ask to unmute. Ez. There he is. How you doing?
Back in the house. How are you guys?
Oh, yeah. Just real quick for everybody. Ezra and I used to work together for Noel back in the day. We were the dope boys making
before we went online, right?
Yeah. This is back. This is offline, right? How you doing, bud?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
Good. What's going on?
Good to see both of you guys.
Yeah, been a Momo.
Yeah,
been a Momo.
I'm kind of an OG. Sort of.
Indeed.
Yeah, so things are pretty good. My question, great to see both of you guys. I mean, I feel like
Yeah.
Just real quick, can you tell people what you did? We were working together. You were in LA. You're like, I'm gonna bounce. And just tell us, bring everybody up to speed about what you're doing before we just jump into quick to the question, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. So I was living out in Los Angeles. I think this is pre-pandemic.
2019.
Yeah, and just a little more backstory. I'm a bar restaurant guy my entire life, but I've always wanted to, do something, and I'm in pizza or my own little thing. And I found Noel's artisan baking classes at Surface. I don't know how I found them online, but long story short is I took the class just like everyone else wanted to. Like, I wanted to learn how to make pizza. I knew nothing about it. I ate more pizza in my life probably than anyone else that I've ever met. Everyone probably says that, right? But I had a really strong desire to want to learn about pizza, and I came and took your artisan beginner class. And I'd lived pretty close by. I was over in Culver City. And I had a quick conversation with Noel after, and I told him, I think we know some mutual people. I knew you had just consulted on Flour and Water up in San Francisco, and my chef buddy was friends with the chef up there. And long story short, I just told you, I was like, I'd really like to open up a pizza place. And Noel was kind enough to invite me in and say, hey, why don't you just come in here and, do the stage thing and help out? And I did with you guys for what, 3-4 months, maybe a couple days a week until we got until we got hit with the old pandemic. But my goal at that whole time was to try to start a pizza thing. I wouldn't say that the pandemic kind of thrust me into, starting a pizza company. I had the idea of doing it all along, but when the pandemic hit, unfortunately, and I miss California, I miss it dearly, but I lost the job that I had, or I knew I was going to lose it. So I decided to move back to Florida, which I'd lived in for a long time. I bought one of those mobile caterer wood-fired pizza ovens that you can tow around. And I had been learning pizza with you guys, and I kind of just jumped in. I really just jumped into it. I started making pizza during the pandemic, going to a brewery. It worked out pretty well. I moved into a bigger scenario of a pizza trailer, quite a big thing, actually. If anybody wants to take a look, and Justin, if you want to throw it up there, I called my pizza company at first Curbside Pizza, but I changed it a couple months ago because I'm kind of going through a transition and a rebrand. I now call myself the Pizza Bear. You guys can laugh as much as you want at the name. I think it's pretty funny. But the Instagram handle is pza.bear. That's where you could see the history of all my pizza from the very beginning of making pizza in my backyard in like a rock box to the wood-fired mobile unit, and then the bigger unit, and then now it's kind of dormant because I'm not really making any pizza except for at home. That's my story.
That's
good
awesome.
story. Good story.
I just put your Instagram in for everybody, so please check Ezra's Jan, the Pizza Bear. All right, I'm going to jump off and let you guys chit-chat for a little bit. Ez, great to see you, brother. We got to get some pies again. All right.
Yeah, and thank you. And I have to say that, I mean, I don't know. All of the education, Noel, that I've learned, I've sent you text messages about this. I can't say enough about just the knowledge that you can get from all the things that you're doing. So that's a good set, because for everyone here, that for these questions that I'm going to ask, my pizza dough has essentially been, I'm a slow rise. I come from your camp, right?
Yeah.
So most of the dough mixes that I've made, I've learned from what you teach people, or what I've learned from your classes, or anywhere else that I've I went and staged at Flour and Water for a week and a half too.
Did you really?
Yeah, which is now I think called Yellow Moto.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now I think there's another one over in North Beach, right?
Yeah, so the partners kind of divided up some of the businesses, and so so now you've got several locations under different names and different chefs.
Right. And excellent pizza.
Thank you.
Yeah, so my question is about, well, actually I have a couple of questions. I'll say this, I'm not the greatest at asking the questions, but I'm looking at, and I'll tell you why, because I'm looking at doing a pizza thing. I'm trying to get my own place going, but I'm now probably going to I'm connecting with the guy that's opening a pizza spot. It's not necessarily going to be, I need a job, and he's like, hey, you want to come make pizza there? and it's not going to be my dough, but he's making a dough process and I'm kind of working with him on it. And he's asking me questions about my process and they're opening my eyes to certain things. So first question I have was if, like after call it the bulk retard, right? If like doing the process that we normally do, if you shape your dough balls and you're putting it into a walk-in that's anywhere between 36 and 40 degrees, how much fermentation is happening in the dough ball itself when it gets to the temp of the walk-in, right?
Yeah.
For, I mean, however long it takes it to do that. But if you're going to take your dough ball at, once it's shaped and maybe ferment maybe for 2 days additional after 1 day of bulk, how much fermentation is happening in that really slow, cold process is my question.
Quite more than you would think. More than you would think. So I'll take Flour and Water as an example because that was one of the projects that I did pretty early in my career, and at the time it was definitely one of the biggest and kept me up at night, right? Because the chef Tom McNaughton was extremely knowledgeable and demanding. He had been making pizza for a long time in his own restaurant, Flour and Water OG, but also he came from like New Jersey, where he had this pizza memory of more of a New York style thing, but he wanted more fermentation, higher hydration. He wanted a mix of flours. He wanted all kinds of stuff, right? He didn't want to use sourdough. He wanted to, he had like a long checklist of things to check. And so long story short, I had to build what I call a fermentation model. And the way that the model works is you try to figure out. I always said I was going to do a class on this, but I haven't done it yet. I should put it back on my list. And so what you have to do is model out how much time the dough ball spends at what temperature through different phases of the fermentation process, right? Starting with the mix, then the bulk retard. Then you take it out and it comes up to temp and you ball it and you put it back, right? And so you have to figure out, depending on the temperature, the time, and how much yeast is in the dough, at what point do you get to 50% of total fermentation, 60, 70, 80, 90? In a perfect world, what you want is a dough that's almost entirely fermented almost when it comes out, so that really it's just coming to temp, you're baking it off, and it's full flavor, right? Now it's dangerous because in a pizzeria you never really know when you're going to use a dough you mix on Tuesday, because it depends how busy you are Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday,
right?
So the difficulty with that dough was that we were making giant amounts of dough, and even now with their new location, Jesus Christ, they're making so much dough, but you don't know how busy you're going to be, right? And so that dough needs to be awesome after 2 days, and it needs to be awesome after 4 or 5 if need be, right? So I would say that what you need to do is constantly be monitoring where the dough is at all times and trying to figure out, all right, if this dough is old, when I pull it out to use it, I probably don't need to let it sit out for 4 or 5 hours, right? I probably can stretch this dough after 2 hours, because more than that, it's going to be over fermented. Vice versa, if the dough is young, you might want to bring that dough out and let it sit at a temperature so that it can ferment for 5 or 6 hours before you stretch it, right? Because you don't want an under-fermented dough, especially in a professional situation, because you want the same experience to the customer, whether the dough is 2 days old or 5 days old, right? This is not home baking.
Right.
So that's why I think like this whole idea of fermentation modeling is actually really important. I work with some guys here that all jumped ship from basically building car batteries for Elon Musk and rocket ship batteries, and now they built a food truck. I call it a rocket ship disguised as a food truck, because it's basically a rocket ship on wheels, and they do stuff like fermentation modeling like I could never even imagine. What they've got going on in their control room is like nothing anybody would believe. Justin, maybe you can put a link to those guys in the chat. But anyway, that's a project I've been working on for a while, and they have this issue there where the reason I bring it up is that that's a much different process than, let's say, Flour and Water, where it's super artisan and everybody's really well trained and they've gone to culinary school and worked in like Michelin 3-star restaurants and now they're making pizza, right? We're talking about computer chips and laser beams and like mechanical claws making pizza, right? And so what's beautiful about the artisan process is that if you are a pizza maker, every single day, every single minute, the dough is changing and you're constantly adapting. But if you're a robot, you're not adapting. You're programmed to do the same thing over and over a million times, right? You can't take a piece of over fermented dough and treat it gently. You have claws. You're ripping that dough apart. Right. So it's even more important to make sure that that dough is perfect, whether it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days old. It's got to perform the same way every time.
So I feel like I may have gotten a little bit lucky to kind of jump in and see how someone like a Flour and Water is making the dough that you helped design with it or design for them, in that it was probably made to be, it was built for a high volume place. Like you're saying, we don't know how many doughs or pizzas we're gonna make on a Tuesday or a Thursday, but yet if we take this dough, like you're saying, monitoring it, we know when we need to take it out for it to get to, or prove to get temp we want.
And I remember when I was opening that place, the thing that I was most afraid of, there were a few things, but one was that it was going to be so busy that, if you were doing 800 pizzas a day, you don't have a big enough walk-in to store 2,400 dough balls and all the other things that you need to make 2,400 pizzas in 3 days. Right. So how is this going to work? And then the other thing is that if you have slow days and fast days, and sometimes you're doing, I don't know, 1,400 dough balls in a day, and other times you're doing 200 because it's raining or God knows what in San Francisco, that dough needs to be the same all the time because to me at least, San Francisco is a pizza city. It's a restaurant city. LA is having its time in the sun now, but there was a long period of time where we weren't really known for our chefs, for our pizza, for our restaurants, tacos maybe, right? But a lot of the other stuff, not really. San Francisco came out way before we did. They had their day in the sun. I remember going there in the 1980s, and it was quite a restaurant scene. And in LA was just way behind. So I was afraid that all these people would find out I didn't know what I was doing because they'd come in and they'd be like, this. Flour, I mean, like the original Flour and Water, that place, like I remember going there when I was like just a new pizza maker thinking, oh my God, this is incredible what they're doing here with these ingredients and that wood-fired oven and that dough. And there was all these great line cooks. They were doing, I thought they were doing like next level stuff, and it turns out they were. Right. And you had Tartine around the corner from the location that I was working at. And I was like, I can't be 2 blocks from her Tartine and not turn out great pizza. It would be an embarrassment to me and everybody at that place. Like I couldn't sleep for 9 months.
Well, I think you did a good job. It turned out really well. It's good.
It did turn out well, but I can't really take very much credit because the people on the ground there now, right, that are still doing it and hopefully even improving it, they get all the credit. I mean, I'm pretty sure that some of the same people are still there making the dough and stretching the pizzas and doing all kinds of stuff. So, I mean, it's a group effort.
So not to get off topic on it, because I had a second question, but I found it interesting in his process that they use, and I hope I'm like sharing secrets here.
No such thing. Go ahead.
Right. He added, and I remember hitting up Justin about this one day when I first landed in Florida, and I was going through trying to figure out how I'm going to make the dough I wanted for my wood-fired oven. That they added their oil last in the mix. And
absolutely, we add it last. That's how you do it professionally.
But that's not the steps that we were doing in some of the mixes that we made.
Well, that's right, and this is something that I try to express to people all the time. The way that I teach people to make pizza really depends on their level of experience and understanding, right? There's ways that I would teach an advanced pizza maker or a professional pizza maker that would be different from how I would teach a beginner or an intermediate home baker, right? It also depends on the kind of mixer you have, right? It
Right.
also depends on the style of pizza that you're doing. It depends on so many different things. So Justin used to call me out on this all the time. He'd say, wait, no, but that's not the way we do it in the advanced class. I'm like, yeah, exactly, because this is the beginner class, and vice versa, right?
So I did it wrong for 2.5 years.
No.
I know,
Like,
I know. I'm kidding. But I made it, the results were really good. I stuck with the wets first.
It's not better or worse, right or wrong. There's reasons why there are traditional ways to do certain things, like adding fat towards the end of the mix, for instance. But if you need to break a rule, I always say it's okay. But when you start breaking 2 or 3 rules, right, that's when you might get into trouble. And plenty of people are breaking 5 and 6 and don't even know it.
I don't want to take up all the time in this class too, but I have another question, which I
Let's do it real quick.
should have asked it first. So after your mix and do you stretcher folds, you bring it into the walk-in and you're bulk retarding for 24 hours.
Yeah.
Is there even distribution? Should you be concerned about the temperature in, like, let's say it's a 10,000 gram batch of dough?
Yeah.
Are you gonna get even distribution of?
You should always be concerned about the distribution of temperature. And so the bigger the mass, the more you should be concerned. And so what I'm always trying to do is figure out just the most dough you can put into a bulk fermentation container so that you don't have uneven fermentation on the inside and outside of a dough ball. Right? It's called the mass effect. We cover it in a few different classes. And it's also something I learned about in advanced bread and pastry. And it is in full effect whether you know it or not. And a lot of the bakeries that I work with, one of the reasons I'm able to do a lot of virtual consulting is that I've seen that problem and I know all the signs. So if somebody wants to employ me and they're like, all right, first thing first, how come we mix the dough and then 2 days later we pour it out on the table and it seems like every dough ball that we ball performs differently? Probably you didn't control the temperature well enough either during the mix or during bulk, right? Or during a million other times. And so you're getting, when you pour out a big wad of dough, let's say 10,000 grams or 10 kilos, and some of that dough is 52 degrees in the middle, and some of that dough is 42 degrees on the outside and everything in between. And then you try to ball that dough and expect to use it at the same time and get the same results from 10 totally different dough balls, you're out of your mind. So that's a short answer to a long question. Excellent questions, by the way.
Got it. Thank you.
Well, consistency, right? The make to bake schedule, always a sliding scale. Always a sliding scale. Ez, it's so good to see you, man. I love your Instagram. I put it in the thing. Keep
awesome.
Keep making pies, bud. Great to see you. Come back and see us, okay, bud?
Yep.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you. Daniel Rodriguez, I'm going to bring you on because you rose that hand. I'm going to promote you. And hopefully you'll be unmuting. Hello. Daniel, where'd you go? Oh, hey.
Daniel in the dark, as always. Come on, Daniel, where are you?
Let's get that video on.
I'm gonna turn my light down so I can have like a real.
There you go. We all got to do Daniel. Here you go. Here you go. I'm turning mine off too.
Romantic, like. Hey,
yeah,
Daniel,
there we go.
Nice. What's up, guys?
Barry, how's it going, bud? Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you guys.
Nice to have a regular in the house.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course. No. Well. Yeah. Okay.
What can we do for you? What can we do
fine,
for you?
Dude. Just
No, it's not. It's. I'm sure it's his wife or his child or his
father.
He runs a family business. This guy.
Yeah.
Could be his grandmother. I don't know. Shh, honey, we're trying to sleep.
All right. Yeah. Let me ask my question. All right. So. All right. So yeah, it's cold. It's cold up here in Massachusetts right now. And
how cold?
So right now it's in my pizzeria. I'd say it's like 68 degrees.
Fahrenheit?
Fahrenheit, yes.
Yes, sir.
And so right now the dough, when I take my dough out from retarding, I've been having it out for like 3 hours, and it's when I go to scale, it's still like 48 to 50 degrees. I think I've had better success when I'm shaping my balls when they're around like in the 60 range.
Yeah.
And I'm not getting there, so not getting the best results. And I was curious if you thought that I could scale the dough like pretty quick afterwards. Like let's say an hour afterwards, and let it like kind of hang out at room temperature scaled for about an hour and not have a negative effect.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So a couple of things I would say. You could definitely do that. That would be a good plan A. A good plan B would be maybe to add a little bit of time in bulk out of the cooler before you put it in the cooler. Because if you had a dough that had more fermentation on the front end, it would come out of the cooler with a little more fermentation before it got to the end, and it might be easier to shape, and you might already just have more fermentation and have a more mature dough ball. That would be another thing. Are you doing a pre-shape?
Um, Lately, because the dough has been cold, I haven't.
No,
I'm
no, no. It should be the opposite. That's
Yeah.
really when you need to do a pre-shape to let it warm up.
Oh, really?
Oh
Okay.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay, yeah, just because I put it right, I put it on my table, I scale it, and like even when I go to shape, it's just like I'm like,
No, no, no,
wow.
no, no. So here's what I would do. How many dough balls are you shaping out of one bulk fermentation container, give or take?
Well, I have them in 3 containers, but I do like 100 at a
Okay,
time.
100 at a time. Good. So
Yeah.
here's what I would say. How many can you fit on a table at a time? On the
Uh,
table where you're you
like
have a big
how?
like a big wooden table or a big stainless table. How
Yeah,
many
it's
can
a
you?
big stainless steel table, and then so what I do is I take out my big piece of dough, and so this is like my process. I take out my big piece of dough, and then I cut them all into pieces and put them into my plastic, like the pizza container.
Yeah.
I do that, but I do it to all of them. I like scale all 3 buckets.
Okay.
So like I have like 100 pieces
Okay.
of
Good.
dough
Good.
sitting there.
Good.
And then I rotate everything around, so I go back to the first tray.
That should
And
work really well. You go back, and then what I would do is go back and pre-shape each one from the first to the last. Then go back and then shape each one from the first to the last. And you should have a really nice, beautiful dough ball that is going to come to temperature much more quickly because it's a smaller mass of dough, right? And it's not look, if it was 90 degrees in there, I would say no, 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 you don't want to do a long pre-shape or bench rest. But
Mhm.
that pre-shape and bench rest are really important parts of the quote unquote 14 steps of baking. Really,
Mhm.
really, really important. So in my intermediate class, Justin, if you wouldn't mind putting a link to that one in the chat, I spend like an hour going over all the steps and trying to explain how are they connected and why are they important, and how does one account for another, and how does changing one thing during step 6 make something else happen during step 8, 9, or 10, and vice versa.
Right, right. No, yeah, because when my dough is exactly like when I go to shape it's already. I mean, maybe I'll try like mixing a little less too, or like
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah, yeah.
one less stretch and fold, because
Yeah,
yeah, my dough is like right now, and exactly with it being cold too, it's like it's super strong.
super strong.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I'm
too
like,
too strong.
maybe I'll try like mixing a little less, and maybe like a stretch and fold or less, but yeah, that's
Good.
what. Yeah. Yeah.
So okay, so let's think about it. If you want less strong dough, mixing less is good,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
One less stretch and fold is good. More bench resting is good. So bench rest in between the stretch and fold and the final shape. That's your bench rest, right?
Right. Yeah.
Super important. Super important. And so here's the thing. People always say, can I skip this step or can I skip that step? Well, I always say it depends. So here's what I would say. As far as like the bench rest and the pre-shape, you don't want to skip it in the wintertime. You want extra time, right? floor time for your dough. Whereas in the summertime, let's say it's 110 and humid, you want to get that dough shaped and back in the refrigerator as soon as possible, or you're going to get over fermented dough, right?
Oh yeah, no doubt. Yeah, that's why I'm like, yeah, no. I mean, I think if I could get it like a little warmer, I'm like, oh, I think this would be easy. But it's like with like a
All,
50,
good.
I'm working with it around like 50, 52 right now, and I'm like,
No, I get it.
you
Now,
know.
also, what is your desired dough temperature on your dough?
What I wanted to know.
It's coming out at like 72 right now.
Okay, well, for me, that's more of a summertime temp. So in the wintertime, maybe you want to come out at 74, 75 and see if that helps.
That's why I was thinking 3 degrees warmer water on the mix.
Okay, hold on. All right, yeah. Well, so what? How would that help out? How would that help out with like the whole shaping process?
Well, you would have more fermentation on the front end, right?
Hmm.
More air in the dough. And
Right.
so I think that the dough hopefully would be usually more fermented dough tends to, depending, I don't want to make any rules, but any over generalities, but more fermented dough, depending on a million different things, will often be easier to shape and more extensible, which is, I think, is what you're looking for.
Ready to dance a little sooner. That's what I always think about.
Ready to dance a little sooner.
Dough wants to party.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Now, don't quote me on that, because there's so many things. No, here's the thing, like all of these things that we're talking about are major changes. The difference between 72 and 74 or 75, that's major, right? Adding more bench time, right? Adding more, taking away a stretch and fold, these are major. And so
Yeah.
just do one at a time, not all 3 or 4 at the same time, and see what works the best. Changing your DDT is a pretty big one. But if you change it by 1 degree and then 2 degrees and then maybe 3 degrees, that would be a good thing. I prefer to change the time over changing the recipe. Some people would say, okay, hold on. In the summer, I'm going to use less yeast, and in the winter, I'm going to use more. That's another thing. I try not to do that, because then other things happen.
Yeah, no, I feel like, yeah, ever since like I've started talking to you and taking these classes, I'm like, the more I learn my lesson of just trying to just do one change at a time.
Yeah.
And take notes, Daniel. Take notes so you know, because that's what we said. To make the best pizza you made in your life, you're gonna want to figure out how you did it. That's for sure.
And
So.
I remember going back to Flour and Water real quick. I think it was the first time I made a rule, because they were really, really working hard. I worked for weeks with those guys, getting them up and running on their dough. Weeks. I mean, months offsite and weeks on site. And here was the rule: if your dough comes out at the desired dough temperature or 1 degree off, that's okay. Make a note. 2 degrees or more, you got to call a senior chef in, a sous chef, a CDC, or an executive chef, and there needs to be like a meeting of the minds to decide, what are we going to do so that in 2 or 3 days or 4 days, when this dough is being used, it's not going to be matzo ball soup because it's over fermented, right? Or it's not going to be too tight and in the middle of a big rush, and a big rush at Flour and Water is no joke. Your 13-inch pies are only stretching to 11 inches.
Yeah.
No good.
I've been there many a times.
We all have been there. It's the worst.
Oh, yeah,
it's the worst.
Really
People are like, hey, I ordered a medium. This is a small. You're like, it's actually a medium, but sorry.
Yeah, no, I get it. Like I try to, and it's so hard when you're doing it in like well, I mean, even at a home setting, but in a like, because like you just want to see results so bad, but like you
Of
just
course.
you got to
Of
do the
course.
one thing at a time, and like Justin said, record it. Yeah. Write
Yeah.
it down.
One of the things that I would also say, I keep going back to Flour and Water, but that particular project taught me a lot. But it was the first time they allowed me to really design the entire pizza line from the mixer all the way to the oven. And I brought in 2, not 1, but 2 proofer retarders. And that's a really important part of the process, because here's one thing that I learned the hard way. when you're not mixing in Santa Monica, where it's 60 degrees every morning, maybe 70, right? And really rarely goes above 80 degrees. It's easy to make consistent pizza. But in San Francisco, where it's warm in the afternoon and freezing in the morning and then freezing at night again, or Chicago, where it's like 32 degrees and you're walking and minus 20 outside, you're like, wait a minute, how can I can't make consistent pizza here, right?
Yeah. Right.
So
Yeah.
my point is, if you ever got to the point where you wanted to make an investment, you could buy a retarder, you could buy a candy or a chocolate thermostat and put it in a roll-in refrigerator. And so you could temper your fermentation so that you weren't dealing with these issues. Because using a retarder in the process, especially in the last, let's say, 12 hours of the life of your dough ball, is a game changer. And now I haven't been to the new Flour and Water since they opened it, but I know because I helped them design that first kitchen and the second one that they have a bank of proof of retarders, a bank of them, right? Because they know if you need 2,400 dough balls on deck, you want to make sure that every single one is being controlled within a 1 or 2 degrees of its desired temperature at any phase of the process. Because that fermentation modeling that I was talking about with Ezra is no joke. And when, I think the Flour and Water location, the kitchen that is there, is set up to serve as many as 3 pizzerias, right? So without saying too much, which I already have, like that place that Tom opened, that new place, is no joke. And if you ever get a chance to go in there and see the kind of firepower that exists in that dough room, it is no joke. They're doing everything I taught them and more. So that's what I love about working with awesome chefs. Like, you go in there, you teach them everything you know. They torture you for 2 weeks or a month or 3 months, and then they make even better pizza than you taught them to make a year or 2 years or 3 years later. Because that's what great chefs do. They're always tinkering, always improving. It makes me look good. People are like, oh my God, the pizza at Flour and Water is great. I'm like, thanks. I haven't been there in years. And they're making me look good because not just the chefs, but the people that work at restaurants like that, they intend to be the next, Tom McNaughton. There's people that came up through Flour and Water OG that are now big pizziolos on their own. Sorry, I don't know if my plural of pizziolo is right. Pizzioli, Justin, pizziola, pizzio what? Pizza people, pizza makers.
People. Absolutely.
Anyway, these are great questions. I hope I answered them.
Yeah. Did you is there any like proof or retarder that you guys like?
I'll tell you what I like. I use the True manufacturer a lot. I like their customer service. They stand by their equipment. Anytime I've had problems, I get like top level support, and I've had problems. But usually they're man-made problems, meaning somebody on the floor, on the ground, could be a man or a woman. Even though I said man-made, they might not necessarily understand everything that we're talking about. And so the retarder, and especially a proofer retarder, is no joke. There's a lot of technology going on there, right? That you can change the hydration of the air, I forget what they call it, the what's it called? The humidity.
Oh,
You can
that's so
change the
cool.
temperature. You could turn on hot air or cold air. It's no joke. Some of these proofer retarders, the ones we had at Flour and Water, I think they were 16 grand each, and we had 2.
Mm-hmm.
Plus all the
nice.
plumbing and ventilation, no joke. But very powerful, very powerful.
You said True?
Yeah, True
right?
makes a great retarder. You don't, for your purposes, I don't think you need a proofer retarder. But that's what we used at Flour and Water, because those cold mornings can be brutal and you need some warm air.
Mm-hmm.
We probably in Los Angeles rarely would need a proofer.
All right, cool. I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Cool,
Yes,
Daniel.
sir.
Great to see you, brother. Thanks for hanging out with us again.
Yeah, good to see you guys.
Yeah,
You
always,
too.
bud.
Thank you.
Always.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you again soon. Good stuff. Good stuff. Noel, here we are,
Justin, here we are.
6:09.
Thank
What
you.
do you think?
Thank
We
you.
had Dom said, I had a revelation this week. I put 50 Detroit doughs in my dough boxes and let them proof in there and then put them into the pan and stretched. was a lot easier than wrestling and stretching dough in 50 individual pans, big time.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, guys, it's all about getting that make to bake schedule that works for you in your environment, depending on the variables in your pizza equation. And that's the thing. And I love what we were just talking with Daniel about, and just remember that those variables change. Like Noel's saying, it can be this temperature, it can be that temperature, and how all those different variables affect your dough. So remember, you can always tinker and change up. So that's why we say pizza does not, or a recipe does not a pizza make. It's all about the process that you get to find the dough that you want to share with people. Noel, it's 6:10. I know you wanted to jump out. You want to say bye to our friends?
I don't want to. I have to. I got stuff going on. It's kind of crazy this week.
Yeah.
So yes, I do want to thank you, Justin, for keeping me on time and
Sure.
and staying organized. Couldn't do it without you. Also, thanks to all the people that joined us this week. I know, Justin, there's never enough people for you, but I think it's really more about the quality time that we get to spend with people on these Zooms, and I really enjoy it. Let me just say that I'm sorry that in 2 weeks I'm going to be out of town on a project and will not be able to do an office hour. So we're going to take at least 1 week off. So we will keep an eye on my Instagram for updates.
It's going to be
we're
October the 30th, guys. No office hours on the 30th. But next week, I already put in the registration page for the sourdough with Eric Palant coming, which will be tons of fun. So got that stuff in there. I also put the Slow Rise, the advanced class, and the intermediate class. Ezra, we got Pizza Bear in there. Ari and Dom, sorry we didn't get a chance to see you guys this evening. Ari, we'll get you next time. I saw your hand up, but so it goes. The hour's done. Noel, say goodbye to these people, would you?
Goodbye, people. I'll miss you.
All right, guys. You know the deal. As we used to say during high pan demo, stay safe, stay strong, belong with one another, the opposite of being short, because we all belong here together. Go out there, make, bake, burn, learn, my friends. Here at Slow Rise, we do not get into the politics of pepperoni and pineapple. Oh no, forever and ever we say pizza always, and always pizza. Pieces and slices, everybody, with love.